Peace and blessings. My name is Ra, and this is another great episode of Pilot Language. In this episode today, I had a chance to grab a righteous brother. I had a chance to sit down with somebody that's a professor, a soccer player, a coach, a family man, and somebody that's willing to help. You know, I'm real big on helping hands, and I'm real big on giving back because that's the best thing we can do. So anybody, I said it before and I'll say it again, anybody who keep information and anybody who feels like they can't share and provide anything about life, you're missing one of the best things that you offer, one of the best things we could tap in with life, sharing and growing together in real time. And this is why I got my brother right here today named Kafui. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I said it's great to have you. How your day been going?
So far, so good. Busy, but good.
So like I was saying earlier, and, you know, I kind of, I'm going to have you explain it better, but as I was saying earlier, professor, what exactly do you teach?
So here at Quinnipiac, I have two roles. My main role is the Assistant Vice President for Career Development and Experiential Learning, and my secondary role is a faculty member.
And I remember I was reading your bio, and it was something as your mission to educate and inspire others to reach their God-given potential. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. That's powerful work, brother.
Thank you.
But what life experience or unrocky moments shape this mission for you? And how do you see it impacting the lives of those you work with?
Well, and that's to get to that point where I had to create that mission or that vision for myself. It took a lot. Let's just put it that way. Mm-hmm. Let's go back a little bit to the beginning, where I come from a family of educators. My dad was a high school principal. Nice. And so education was a big thing in our family. My dad, from the right of gate, say education is the key to success. Mm-hmm. That's something that we heard in and out. Peace to his soul. He's no longer with us anymore, but he has instilled the value of education in all of us as children, as family. And earlier on, even when I graduated from college, I started to teach already as a high school teacher, doing teaching economics at my dad's school because he has his own private school. So from the beginning, all I knew that I wanted to be educating others because I love the feeling of being in the classroom, talking to the students, just exchanging ideas, seeing the light bulb moment that come off and students get it. All those things, I think, that are almost food to the soul when you are in those moments and you see somebody that was like, I can't get it. All of a sudden, you see that moment. So those little things have been things that are very empowering to me personally. So when I transitioned from Togo, West Africa, to the U.S., I knew I also want to continue to get an education, ultimately becoming a faculty member, which is what I wanted to do. And I started my journey, and then as part of that journey, getting the education, learning a lot about the new culture and everything. But I also realized that I'm being tapped into various pockets when the opportunity presented themselves for me to talk about different things, you know, my own personal demeanor, how I carry myself in situation, my thoughtful approach to things. So I've been pulled into those various pockets to help educate and guide others. So I realized that not only I want to continue being a faculty member because I love the classroom feeling and, you know, just being in there with the student, but I also saw a different dimension in terms of becoming a leader and helping to educate the next group of leaders that are going to be in charge of pretty much leading us into the future that we all aspire for ourselves and our family. So as part of that journey, becoming a member of student government, graduating again, being a trustee at a major university, public university in New York City. So just continue to learn and started to identify those various pockets. And at the end, I realized, yes, this is the place that I want to be.
The thing about that, like you said, helping people and having these people like learn in real time. A lot of time when people come to a college, they sign up for that. You know, they put in grants for that. They do all these type of things, so they chose to do that. Mm-hmm. But in the midst of these, goals chasing, in the midst of these process, in the midst of us trying to figure out exactly what we want to do, we can fall off. I think about it on YouTube. When you upload a reel on YouTube, it only could be a minute. When you think about, they doing studies about a person's attention span and how they taking things in and how they process things. They said sometimes you go fast as 2 seconds. So if you can't grab them in 2 seconds, you lost them. What kind of challenge do you see yourself facing where, you want to educate, you want to help, you want to provide all this information, but at the same time, you know that if I can't snatch them, basically I don't have them. Like, what qualities or values do you believe have earned you the respect of others as a leader? How do you channel these into making meaningful impact through their education?
So that I can answer that in two pockets. One from the academic standpoint, where as a faculty member teaching specific courses, students need those courses in order to graduate. So that's part of the requirement of things that they have to do. And not only they are required to take those courses. So, typically people are like, I just need to pass the class. My goal is I want you to leave my class with something. You don't have to live with everything that I'm teaching you. So providing the space for students to start to connect the content that we are teaching in the classroom to real life scenarios has been something that a couple of my faculty have done that turned the switch for me in terms of how I view content, academic content, and how they apply in real life. And that's something that I always aspire to do with my students, for them to be able to get something out of the class. So for example, this semester I'm teaching a class, the FYS class, where I've personally, this was not a requirement of the syllabus, but I integrated presentation as one of the assignments for the class. And the reason why I did that is because towards the end of the class, we cover so many different topics. So I asked students, you pick your own topic, something that spoke to you this semester, something that resonated with you to some extent, and give me a presentation about that. Because I know if I make you do that, you're going to leave this class remembering that, because that's something that spoke to you, something that appealed to you and you were passionate about. And not only you went outside and did some more research about that topic, and then you came back and presented to the whole class about that. And one of the things is, I say, how does this apply to you? You have to be able to speak to that. So from that perspective, it's really taking the academic content and showing students how this apply to you in your personal life. So when you leave my class, those things still stay with you, and hopefully they can continue to be helpful as you navigate your college journey. That's the one pocket. The second pocket is really the leadership aspect of things. So a lot of workshops that I do, professional development that I do, is really things that are not necessarily required. Oftentimes you have an audience of people that are curious, that are interested in things that they want to learn more, and they are on that journey of self-discovery. Yeah. They just don't know where they are on that journey. And they're just looking for the tools to explore things that will make certain things meaningful for them, so they can discover what it is that they truly want to do. So helping people discover their own identity, that personality. Who are you as an individual? What are your triggers? How does emotional intelligence come into that picture to help you navigate the complexity of life and the group of people that you're going to be working with day in and day out? Not even just working, but even family members. Yeah. The context, how do you navigate that? In order for you to do that effectively, you have to know yourself. That process is what I try to empower in those spaces where I do leadership development, for people to be able to grab the concept, discover who they are as an individual, and in the process find out what they are passionate about. Because when you can get somebody to identify those passions, then you can talk about the purpose that are connected to the passion and how they can empower others, how they can transform society. Even, sometimes I like to take a step back when we talk about transformation, because people think it's such, you have to transform society in a major
overnight.
Yes. No. That's transformation is something that can happen in small scales. Even if it's something that you make better for your small community, for your small group of friends that you hang out. You did something that made that community better. That's transformation. And sometimes people forget that those little transformation is what lead to the bigger transformation of community or society in general. So how do you discover that purpose and use your passion to be able to continue to be a powerful presence in your group, in your community, so you can continue not only to help yourself grow, but to carry the light? Because again, we are paving the way. The way we are paving, somebody else was before us that paved it. We are carrying that torch, and we have to make sure that there is somebody else coming behind us that's still making the process better. So that's the philosophy that I use when I'm working with student or any adult in any group setting. So both the academic and the non-academic side are actually connected, because again, ultimately I want you to leave my session with something, that moment where you realize, wow, now I'm feeling positive. I'm excited to go out there and do something different.
Yes, because self-discovery.
Yeah.
Self-discovery is everything for me. You know, that self-care, that self-love, that self-light. Everybody want to be treated with respect. Everybody want to look at as, value. But if you don't know your own light, how can I value your light?
Yep.
People say so many times that they don't want to go to school. They don't want to do education. They don't want to go that route because they're just going to go this route. But like you said, this self-discovery, this knowing yourself and going through these tools, this is a form of education.
Yep.
Coming to a point where whatever I thought might become a question, and now I'm revaluing my mindset, that's education. But they'll tell you every day that they don't want to do, or they're not going to school, or they're not doing, none of this. So why is discovering our true identity one of the most empowering journeys we can take in life?
It's good because, as you said, you have to know yourself. You have to know who you are as an individual. Because oftentimes people fall into life situations because there is a missing piece, because they didn't know who they are as an individual. So, for example, I mentioned emotional intelligence earlier. That's one of the things that I always teach in any setting. Every time I have a chance to infuse that, I always do. Why? Because emotional intelligence have a couple of different tenets. One of them is the self identity, the self, the learning about the self. And the second phase of that is the managing of the self. Because you can know who you are, but you know how to manage yourself. Because what it does is we all have triggers. We are humans after all. We have emotion. Emotion drive who we are as an individual. So if you learn about who you are, then you know what are those emotions that drives you. What are those triggers? What are the different things that get you going? And now you move on to the second phase where you can manage them. Because just knowing and managing are two different things. Sometimes people trying to put the two together now.
Yeah.
You can know about yourself. You know, this thing highly get me upset or triggers me. And every time somebody does it, it still triggers you. So you know what it is, but because you don't know how to manage it, it gets to you. So you have to get into the second phase where you are managing that. Now, you learn, you know, you manage, and then now you look around you and you start to identify the different emotion that other people around you are bringing to the table. And then you can manage that as well. But until you do the self and you know who you are and manage that, you won't be able to manage others. So one activity that I typically do in my classes and when I do professional development, especially the leadership one, is to do the true caller activity.
The true caller?
The true callers. So it's a personality test where the spectrum is divided into 4 spectrums. So you have 4 colors. So you have the green, you have the blue, you have gold, and you have orange. So those are the 4 colors. So each color has some characteristics that we express as humans, but we don't know that's who we are. So, for example, the greens are the people that are always the big picture thinker. They're thinking about the big things, how we want to go to that destination. Like I can paint you a vision of the future that we should go to. The green are really good at doing that. That's who they are. The gold are the process-oriented people. They'll draw the map, the process, the step-by-step process in how to get to that destination. The orange are the people that motivate the group in terms of create excitement. So I typically like to use this example. If anybody walk into the room and say, let's go skydiving, the gold are the first one to raise their hand because they love that excitement. They want to get things going. They love to really push things and drive things and just get that fulfillment. And then the final color is the blue. The blue are the community builder. We need to get to that destination, but we have to do it together. They are the glue to the community. They bring everybody along. They want to make sure everybody's okay before they even start a project task. So each one of those colors are colors that are really important in society. Because when you think about any settings, you need somebody to really be that community builder, bring people together. You need somebody to be the big thinker, think about what we can achieve together. And you need somebody to drive the movement, and you need somebody to plan it. Somebody can ask the tough question about, listen, what are the legal implications? What is the finance, the budget? You need all that. So understanding who you are as an individual means that you know where you stand in the spectrum. So the good news about all the colors is it's not just one. You don't just have one. We have all of them to some extent, but you always have a dominant color. And that's what you typically act on a day-to-day basis. So if you are green, you still may have blue and gold and orange, but just at a smaller scale. But you really act on the green. That's who you are. So understanding yourself, and I started to understand others in your community, friends, co-workers, what different colors they are, make the process easier to work with them. Because I give this example oftentimes. I say, in one of my former jobs, I used to have a boss who, every time we have a meeting, when she comes in, she asks, how's everybody doing? We spend about the first 15 minutes of the meeting talking about how people are doing, all that. And by the way, I'm green. So green and blue are the opposite spectrum. So for me, I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, let's get down to business. Let's talk about what we need to be doing in this meeting. But my boss cares because she's blue and she's a community builder. She realized in order to get the best out of people, they need to be feel seen. So you have to give them the space to be feel seen in order to give you the best. If you don't do that, you're going to lose them. So that's what she brought to it. I didn't understand at the time. Later on in my career, when I became supervisor, I understood that really quickly.
It makes sense then.
It made sense. Because you walk into the room, you say, let's get down to business, do this. Yeah, you started to realize, like, there's something that is just off in this room. It's because people bring with them their emotion, how they are feeling that morning to work, until you allow them to unpack that and put it to the side so they can give you their attention. You're never going to get 100% out of them.
No.
So you create a space for them to be able to be the best team member they can be for you in order to move project forward. So all that, again, to say, it comes down to knowing yourself, what color spectrum you stand, and knowing the team members that you have, because you create a space for everybody to shine when the time comes, because there are going to be times where you need the group to work together as a team and somebody needs to take the lead. There are going to be times where things are too slow and somebody need to get things going and create excitement. You need the orange. And you need definitely somebody to plan everything for the group. Who's going to be that person? That's when the goal comes into play. So identify those different personalities allows you to be able to build an effective team and community altogether, because you can apply to a business setting and you can apply in a personal life as well. So being able to get the people together in moving in unison in achieving or accomplishing things is really dependent on you being able to know who they are and how are you engaging them in that process.
I like that game you brought up about, the colors. 'Cause like you said, I can be gold, but I still might have some red. I still might have some blue in me. Knowing your attributes, and being comfortable with them to the point where, you don't make excuses for it, but you know your body. You know why you got triggered like that.
Yep.
You know, I remember growing up, I used to get mad at the fact that sometimes I would get mad. You know, like sometimes I get to a point where I get so worked up, or I get to a point where I reacted and maybe I shouldn't react like that, and I'm getting mad at myself. When really I should just know, like you said, this is what's going on. I didn't have time to fully impact this. I didn't have time to fully accept this. Like, okay, this is what happens. You keep doing this, you're going to keep getting mad.
Yeah.
When you was growing up, when was the time that you kind of really embraced emotional intelligence? Because I like that as well. So when you was growing up, what was the time you kind of fully understood, like, this is something that can be really beneficial to me?
So emotional intelligence as a concept is something that I discovered very, very late in my career. Earlier on, I seen the pieces of it. I didn't know it was called in this big umbrella of emotional intelligence, because you can see how sometimes people are driven by certain emotion, and you're sitting there asking, why are you getting mad? I don't think it's that serious. Like, we've all had those conversations at some point with a family member. If a friend say, why is this taking you to that next level? Why are you doing this? Like, can you calm down for a second? All those emotions that people are expressing is the fact that they don't really know themselves, and they don't, or sometimes they do, but they don't know how to manage it, or they don't know how to be part of group dynamics. So I knew the component of it to some extent, but I really became, I really embraced the concept of emotional intelligence. I would say when I started my first career, when I was at the City University of New York, working there, is when I started to really look into the leadership attributes, because I was in student government, like I mentioned earlier, and I realized that one of the things about student government is you thinking about the real politics in today's society. The small version of that is what you see in student government. Like, I used to be the chair of the Senate, and you sit over there as a chair, and people give it to you left and right. But you have to remain calm, and you still, regardless of your opposition, have to remain impartial in your decision making. So things like that have started to, I started to get to a point where I realized now I'm better at managing certain things. And I think it was one, we were a part of, if I'm not mistaken, we did a workshop in one of the leadership retreat, and somebody mentioned emotional intelligence. And I was like, that's it. That's the thing that I'm trying to put a name to, because I've seen pieces of it in terms of how I'm learning about myself, how I'm managing certain things, and how I'm also dealing with others that I couldn't really pinpoint what it was. And then I became really, passionate about learning about what emotional intelligence is and how I can learn more about it. Not only learn more about it, but how can I use that and infuse that in the younger generation or the next generation, and even not just the next generation, but our current colleagues at work, current family members that we deal with day in and day out, so that we can get the best out of our relationship with them. Because if you practice it and you infuse in others, you are bound to have a better relationship with those individuals. So that's really when I embraced emotional intelligence, and I became so passionate about it. And I say, you know what? Every time I get a chance, I'm always going to talk about this, because it's so valuable. Because, again, it goes back to the beginning, the self. Who are you? Do you know yourself? And do you know how to manage your own emotions?
Yes. Do you, because to your point, I remember I'm 34 right now, so I probably found out what the word was. What the word was. With the word emotional intelligence, I was probably like 31, 32. But, when I started to see it and, I started to read up on it and I started to think about it, I can go back to times I've seen it before. I just didn't know the word.
Yeah.
I kind of seen it in, I was blessed enough to be raised by my grandparents. My parents was in my life. I had a community. I had a community of angels that, took time invested in me. So I seen many examples of emotional intelligence. Did you see those type of examples within your parents or, your household, when you came up? Because, the only reason I say that, because my grandfather, right? My grandfather always showed me emotional intelligence, even when I was trying to throw it out the window or be naive to it, far as, knowing what I'm doing, far as educating me with a conversation, not educating you with, violence.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting down with you, trying to pick your brain and having a
Yeah.
conversation to figure out why you're doing this, and this is me telling you why you need to stop doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your, household when you was
Mm-hmm.
coming up, did you ever see examples of that?
Yeah. Again, yes, 100% yes, 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 yes. The same thing. I didn't know it was emotional intelligence when those things was happening. As a matter of fact, my dad was the head of the family because in my culture, the family structure is really large. So you have the uncles, you have the aunties, you have the cousins, like the nieces. Family is usually a big structure back home. But oftentimes you have that one person that is the head of the family, meaning that any sort of issue that come with the family, even if it's relationship between husband and wife, cousins, uncles having argument, that person become the place where those arguments are brought to for resolution. And I've sat often on the side where I see my dad being the head of the family addressing a lot of those issues in family. And he has to taught reason into some people that were acting out on just emotion, not necessarily on anything that is valid foundationally, but they were purely using emotion to drive things, and they were making things work. And I have to sit there and look at my dad taught sense into some people, or bring some people to reason. So emotional intelligence has been embedded, woven into the fabric of how he has managed all the conflict in the family. So that's something that I was very privy to early on. And even with my mom, because my mom is a business person. So dealing with business conflict, like people that didn't do things that they're supposed to do. And sometimes when you have to take one loss in order to win the war, type of situation, my mom was masterful at those things. So they say, why are you getting upset about this? You should keep your eyes on the other thing, because that's the biggest thing. Yeah, this didn't go the way you wanted to, but you have to look at the other side of things. So all those details are things that fall in the realm of emotional intelligence. But I didn't know it was called that. That it was in full-fledged being practiced by our parent, and even like our grandparent, how they bring people into the fold. In most families, when there are conflict and when the grandparents are still around, that's who bring everybody together.
Yeah,
Like
the
and
foundation.
sometimes, the foundation is like, when grandma or grandpa call a meeting, oh, you better be there. Like your cousin, everybody's coming and say, oh. I was just talking to my girlfriend, when was that, 2 weeks ago, and she was telling me about an experience in her family where they brought, for New Year's Eve or something to that extent, where they were supposed to have dinner together. And there was one of her uncle that was not around, that, were on the fence of coming or not coming. And grandma was like, we're not eating until the uncle shows up. She's like, all the other uncle and aunt start making phone call to that one uncle. They're like, you better be here because we're not having this. And they did not eat. And she remained true to that word and say, no, I want all the family here for us to do this because we have to do as a family. And that uncle showed up and they were still able to get things done and eat. They ate really late that night because the uncle had to make the determination, if I don't get here, all my brothers are probably going to kill me if I don't show up. Again, that foundational value that family, have instilled in us are things that our parents have always shown us. And a lot of it was built on emotional intelligence and seeing the future and knowing how bringing people together now can help people being able to navigate all the challenges that can come in the future.
Yeah, because like you said, family is everything. That family and that culture is important. Because we can move anywhere and we can go, wherever we choose to be. But there's going to be certain things from our family and our culture that you can be able to identify or see. Mm-hmm. Speaking of your culture, where you're from, Togo, I want to highlight that real quick. Because, for me, never been to Africa. Of course, I got African descent. We can see that. But, never been to Africa. But when you think about what they highlight and what they show Africa, right? Some people only know Lion King. No! When they'll think about that. They just think about this a wild forest. Some people only know Mandela. Some people only know, sad to say, the slave trade. and the resources, the cocoa beans, the tobacco, the gold. You know, nobody telling us where the good spots to eat at. Nobody's telling us, you know, you come down here, you can get this grant. You know, we invest in this and we invest in that. Nobody's telling us this. So if we, you know, this can, you know, ask you or get a little bit about the great country, you know, you come from.
Yeah, so you're right. My first, when I came to the U.S., I was in Alabama. When I came to the U.S., I started school down there. And I had a brother, actually. I was watching TV in one of the common spaces in the residence hall. A brother came to me and said, "Oh, you're from Africa. So how do you guys cope with the lions and the tigers?" I was so much in shock. I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Yeah, don't you guys have like a lot of lions and tigers running around?" I'm like, "No." No, that's not what it is. That's not how it is. I never seen a lion at that point. I haven't even seen a lion or tiger in my whole entire life, and I've lived in on the continent up to that age, 24. So I'm like, what do you mean? But at the moment, I didn't get it. I was just in shock that he even thought like we have that. I'm scared of lion like everybody, and I'm like, I never seen one. So, and that also opened my eyes later on when I think about the cultural shock, for example, that I have over here in terms of how the continent is being portrayed. And sometimes when you watch documentaries or when you watch some movies and how they always show the negative aspect of the continent in terms of you know, oh, they don't have food to eat, so the little children with the big stomach, those type of stereotype, and a lot of people think though that's the every day on the continent. No, Africa is a very beautiful place. The whole continent is a very beautiful place. I haven't even had a chance to explore all aspects of the continent, and that's the other thing. I have to educate people and say Africa is a continent. We have countries in Africa because for some people, Africa is a country. They don't understand the difference between that. So I have to educate people and let people know. No, you're talking about like 50 plus countries that are on the continent. So let's start from that. And each one of those countries, some have similar culture because, again, the borders were created by colonialism. You know, people come in and say, oh, this is going to be my space and all that. But across some of the border, you can see that you're from the same culture. You eat the same food and do things. But other than that, we have specific identity depending on where you're from. So, like, I had a chance when I came to the U.S. actually to go back and visit South Africa. That was the first time I've been there. And, like, I was in Cape Town. If nobody tell you, like, let's just assume that they drop you there, nobody said anything to you, you will never imagine based on the thing you see on TV that's Africa. You will not imagine because it's much more beautiful than a lot of places in the U.S. Because, again, that's not what they show on TV or in documentaries and all of that. So it's one of the things that you constantly have to educate a lot of people around. But specifically around Togo. Togo, again, like I said, we are a French-speaking country. So the one thing that I really appreciate about my culture is how friendly people are. And in a lot of African countries as well, you see the same thing. Just because we are a people person. Yeah, people, like, we just love people. We love people to come and experience our culture, eat the food, dress in our clothes, so they can see, because it's all about dancing, beat, drums. All of that is part of what makes the culture vibrant, and we love people to come and experience things like that. So we always encourage folks to do that, but we also want people to understand that family is a really important key factor in my culture as well. And I even did a presentation here with President Olin, where the HR has this speaking series where we have to talk about our culture, our origin, different things that we do. And we did that. And I was able to, present about Togo to the whole entire Quinnipiac community. People were like, wow, we didn't know it was this vibrant. So people learn. And we need to be doing a little more education around those things, because when you think about the reverse, there are some that's also true where a lot of people think the U.S. is the Wild Wild West, because you see all those Western movies with people, gunslingers, like doing things like that. Yeah, there's some misconception around there too, or people think the whole entire U.S. is like New York City. because you go to Manhattan, you seen the life, all the light, all the buildings and all that. Like I remember when I was coming here, I thought I was like, yeah, I'm going to, because I landed in New York, so I thought I was like going. My uncle was living in New York, so I thought my uncle lived in one of the tallest building in New York City, and we landed. He drove me from JFK, the airport, to his house, which is like 10 minutes from there, and I'm looking around, I'm like, is this really New York? Because this doesn't look like anything like New York. So that converse was also true, where we experienced that culture shock around what is being sold over there to us as this is the U.S. versus, what the reality is. We have places that people struggle for food, for water, even in the U.S.
Yeah.
Similar situation that we have back home in Africa. So again, it's all about education, and people just need to find out more about the place that you are interested in. What are the positive attributes, or what are the things that are the challenges that those places face? Because every place in the world have the challenges and the good attributes.
I think it's interesting though, because if you think about Africa and you just think about the history of it, you had people coming from many countries over there just to get information. You had people coming for summer tours and spring tours, just get information to come back and cultivate their country, because they had to learn from the Africans. But then as times began to move on, people invaded and they did what they did. And you think about the American experience with Africa, we had roots come out back in the day. Then they took time to make roots again. And then they take time to make movies all about slaves and the experience from Africa and what you're seeing. But we haven't had one movie by the African ruler. We haven't had one movie by the African king. But we're going to make sure we keep pumping this concept of Mandela getting beat up. I don't need to see Mandela in multiple movies getting oppressed. I seen it one time. I don't need to see it again. I don't need to see slaves going back and forth on this ship again. Why can't we know about a ruler? Because it's been, like you said, been many things that they try to hide and exploit. Like you said, the identity. I feel like if they would have really highlight the true essence of Africa, not only would more people want to go, but people in America would treat themselves better. Yeah, they won't walk around with a chip on their shoulder.
I mean, you have to understand something, and I learned this like very recently about even the whole entire Hollywood and the movie community. There is always a hidden agenda.
Yes.
In those movies, and most people don't know this, but there's always a hidden agenda. It's either you want to portray a place in the world as being the place not to be, and you show all the negative things about that place, or you show that one great thing about that place and you make it seems like the whole place is like this. So that agenda is something that has been in movies for a long time, and some of them is also political, because listen, if you say, oh, those people are savages and we need to go help them get civilized so they can get food and water, people will be like, oh yeah, we need to help them. So if you approve budget and billions of budget to go help, people will be okay with that. But if you show the places in Africa that are better looking than some places in the US, and you tell them, let's go help them over there, let's approve this budget, you think people are gonna be okay with that? No. So the hidden agenda in some of those movies, and that's why they keep repeating the same scenes, like they use the same people to make a political statement, or the same scene to show that, oh, they are desperate for help in this, so we gotta go help them, are things that have been happening for generations. So there's a lot of that has been embedded in movie. And again, because a lot of people don't have a chance to travel, when they watch those movies, that become their truth about, or perception of how those places are, because that's the only window they have to be able to see what the other side of the world is.
Yeah, because it's all blessings now, because the way technology is and media is, and this how you can your phone is a walk-in computer, thesaurus, dictionary, whatever you want it to be. So you can see what Africa look like, but if I have a proven set method and image in my head, why I need to go research that when I can just be researching something else? So like you said, it's a hidden agenda that they purposely do on purpose. But I just always find it interesting, when I think about that, because like you said, that experience when somebody that's strictly from the motherland that come to America, and that person that only lived in America and they meet, sometimes could be unwanted tension that has nothing to do with either one of us.
Yep.
It's bigger than us, but sometimes we'll make it with me and you.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it just
They do that all the time because in movies, for example, even back in Africa when they show a lot of movies, even here, the black person is always portrayed as the criminal most of the time. So even when we're watching those movies back home, sometimes you're like, oh, when you go there, be careful. You don't want to be like, you don't want to associate yourself with them because they are the criminal, because that's what the movie shows all the time. They don't show all the successful black people, the things that you can do as build a community, because again, when you do that, it's not good for business. So again, talking about the hidden agenda. So that's why sometimes, some of those messaging are covering for other things that are in motion.
That's a fact. I want to speak about Togo. I want to speak about your experience with soccer. Did your process with soccer start there?
Yeah.
See, I find that sports interesting because that's the type of sports you always moving. From the moment you touch that field, you're going up and down that court. You move and you using everybody. You're using everybody and everything on your body. Your head, your feet, your knees, them legs, that core.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to breathe to play that sports. In what ways has your experience with soccer set your mindset on teamwork, discipline, or achieving goals on and off the court?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Play a major role. I'm very competitive, by the way. All my colleagues and friends know this. The minute we can be having a friendly conversation, the minute you drop a prize in there, you say the best team is gonna win. Oh, my whole demeanor changes because I'm very competitive, and part of it is because I played soccer. But just to start at the beginning, soccer has been is the national sport, the number one sport that everybody plays. Like since growing up as a little kid on the streets, like you see all the kids playing soccer and all of those things. So it's embedded in the fabric. Even when there are disagreements, when there are soccer games, everybody put those disagreements to the side and everybody in front of the TV watching the soccer game. So that's how big of a deal it is when soccer is playing the community. For me, I played soccer, but the funny thing is my dad loved soccer. He was involved even as a leader in the ownership of a club back home at some point. But my mom was never really a big fan of me playing. She liked the sport. She just liked me playing because her thing is always, if you get hurt and you have no plan B, you have no education, so what next for you? And the reason for that is because a lot of young kids give up school early because they have that dream to become a professional soccer because they can see. And similarly, you see here, like, for example, basketball. You have a lot of kids that say, oh, I'm going to make it to the NBA, and they slack in school and they want to dedicate so much attention. But we also know the percentage of people that make it to the NBA is a very tiny percentage that makes it there. Yeah. But that's a dream that people have. So back home, a lot of the young kids were giving up school for soccer, and my mom was never really. But it's something that I did not because I want to become a professional, because I just love it. So for me, it was more of a passion than anything. It so happened that I was really good at it as well. So the potential for me to go professional was there, but because it wasn't fully embraced by my mom, it became just a hobby for me. But what it did for me ultimately is it allowed me to very early on to start to think about team dynamic, because you can be really good by yourself, but you're not winning a soccer game if the rest of the team is not playing well. That's period. So you have many components of the team that need to work together to make sure that the team is successful, not the individual. Yeah, in some time you have to sacrifice, you have to work twice as hard to help your teammate, but that don't mean that only you need to be doing everything for the team, because you're still not going to end up winning games. So that team dynamic, that factor in terms of understanding how we are all working together, or how we all fit together in order to achieve that goal, was something that really was helpful from the beginning in terms of working with people. The other thing that soccer taught me as well is, and this is my personal view, I know this is controversial with a lot of people. I don't believe in the model. I don't believe in the model of everybody get a medal. even the losing team.
Mm,
I don't believe in that.
mm,
The reason for that is when you lose, there is a pain process that you have to deal with. It hurts.
it hurts.
Life has that all the time. So you have to learn how to get the pain, process it, deal with it, and come to the other side of it stronger.
Yeah.
But if you are not allowed to be able to effectively deal with that pain and learn the method, the coping mechanism to be able to deal with that pain, and you continue to grow in life, it's just a matter of time before life hands you a major setback that is going to be very painful to you. And we see that a lot when people haven't had a chance to experience that. When they get to a point in their life where that happens, they feel like it's the end of the world. No, it's not the end of the world. It's just that you never got a chance to learn how to deal with the pain. Because that's what team sports soccer did for me personally. Because you lose the game, during the week, you go back to practice. My coach's first thing is, and when I became coach, I'll say the same thing. Did it hurt? Everybody's like, yeah, it hurt. Hurt. I'm like, good. Do you want to experience that again? Everybody's like, what? No, we don't want to experience. So what are we going to do as a team to make sure that doesn't happen again? And then you get the commitment of people. People practice harder because they want to get better so they don't have to experience that pain again. But the reality is, when you play sport, you're not always going to win.
Nah.
There are going to be times that you're going to continue to lose. So you have to learn how to always overcome that and continue to make progress in terms of becoming better, not only as a team, but as an individual, because the process is you're also learning how to become better as an individual in the sport. So it's that dual component where you becoming better player, but you becoming a better team as well, while you learn a lot of life lesson as part of that process. That's, again, the reason why if you are a little kid, if you go play soccer, you should learn how to lose. Because when you lose, you learn from that. You build a character and you become better individual. So I think a lot of that has helped me personally in my personal life, but also in my professional life. Because, again, a lot of the skills as part of how you deal with team dynamic, how when somebody's in trouble, you all work together to support that person. Like, one of the things that I said in one of my workshops at some point was like, there is nothing better for you as an individual if you make a mistake and you realize you make a mistake and a team member say, oh, don't worry, I saw it and I fixed it. I got your back. That feeling that somebody in your team is able to help you in that moment where you probably lapse of judgment or just didn't realize it, made a mistake, but you know that that mistake was taken care of by a team member who got your back, and you can replicate the same thing for them, that create the best dynamic in any team settings, because that team is always going to be a successful team when we know we all have each other's back, because it's just a matter of time before somebody's going to make a mistake. Mistake is part of life. But when that mistake happens, how are we all there to support each other? And that's the same principle in soccer. Somebody's going to make a mistake, lose the ball. We all have to run back and defend so they don't score a goal. So how are we helping that teammate? And that's the principle that you learn early on the court and off the court, because those are the same principles that I apply in the professional life.
Yeah, that's a fact, because I know in my latest job, right? My latest job is more kind of in the corporate, I say, aspect. So I don't really know about that. So I remember coming in there and feeling not overwhelmed, but just feeling like, how can I get, to the process that I would like to see? And then to your point, I started looking at it like it was a sports team. And I started looking at it at each player. Of course they showing up to win. Of course they showing up to have a better day than yesterday. But how can we all, like you said, collaborate and everybody's talent be used in the best way? How can I assist this person? How this person can assist me? When some days I need to be Shaq or some days I need to be MJ. Just tapping into all these type of things. So, like you said, I like that, because the things about sports with me, a person can sit at their desk, right? And they can daydream, they can drift off, and they can just be locked in typing and not really be there. In sports, you have to be in that moment. In sports, you're moving your physical body and your mental body at the same time. So you're going through this process, and like you said, you're racing to win or lose. So if you lose, it's gonna stick with you, and if you win, it's gonna stick with you, and you always gonna cultivate your way to get to the experience that you want in real time.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, sports for anybody to even, cause I didn't play sports all my life either, but I always kept that, I would say, tool with me because I find a lot of lightness in it. You know, if I'm at this job and I have to be here, how can I make it a little better? You know what? I'm a player, like I'm drawing up plays. like I used to do with the sports thing. So like you said, I like that. I like that aspect because I know with me, I think about how the youngest are. They playing these video games. They want to be a gamer all day. They're not going outside. So it's like anytime I can try to like help one of my youngest go outside, oh yeah, we're gonna go outside. Even to the point where we just racing up and down. You have to do these sports. You have to learn these ways to know how to deal with people. You sit at the TV all day playing your game, and you come in real time at a school and life. You're gonna have mental breakdowns every day because you don't know how to navigate.
You don't know how to deal with people. I just say that to my class. I say there is no job you're gonna do in this world where you're gonna work by yourself. There's no such a thing.
Not
because even if you build your own company and you don't need anybody, whatever it is that you are building, you still have to work with selling somebody. You have to work with somebody in order for them to see the vision or whatever in your product to buy it. So even if you're an English professor, you're teaching, you still have to work with students. You still have to work with other faculty members. So you learning how to work with people is a valuable skill. So I agree. Technology, while it has been very helpful, have also created a set of challenges for especially the younger generation when it comes to gaming, because they're spending a lot of time in front of the screen and they are not getting those human contact, going outside, getting your body to exercise, because the exercise is not only good for you to learn how to interact with people, but it's also healthy. It keeps you healthy.
You can live.
So you live longer if you exercise. So again, there are many different components of playing sport that are really essential, or at least just exercising or getting to connect with people that are beneficial to us as a society. And we need to make sure that is really embedded in how the youngest generation view things. You can still be passionate about gaming, but you can find time to build that external piece into it as well, where you go outside, you go to the park, you talk to people, you just walk. Exactly, all those little things that you can be intentional about doing, so you can just continue to be a better, healthy individual and a better member of society in general.
For real. Be cold a little bit. Get hot. Sweat. It's okay to sweat.
It's okay. It's part of being a human. Yeah.
But speaking of team building,
Yeah.
I want to talk about one of your roles. This man has many roles. This is a great brother. This is a great brother right here. But what are your roles when you're working with African students and Caribbean students? How this allows you to support their culture experience and community building on, you know, not only the campus but on life. You know, what have you learned from working with these, you know, students?
So before I even became an advisor, and you're talking about when I was the advisor for those student club at my prior institution, and I started my journey, as I mentioned earlier, as part of being a student government and all that, and I was also a member of the African Student Association. So I didn't just overnight become the advisor. So I was a member of the group first, and I was part of the executive board, and you know, slowly but surely I built the process of getting to that point where when I became staff members, they asked me to become their faculty advisor. So the experiences I always trying to see when I was a student, what were the things that I would have loved to have at my disposal, or things that somebody could have told me about, so I can be successful in, you know, navigating complex situation. And even especially when you talk about, you know, the immigrant community, like what are some of the key, you know, the cheat sheets that somebody could have provided for you to be able to navigate certain situations better. So that's the lens that I use to support the student. And I'm trying to make it more of a co-partnership. I ask students, have a conversation and say, all right, this is your time. You guys are the student. What it is that you want and how can I help? That's really the lens, because sometimes, you know, as staff members or as administrators, we often want to We think there is a problem and we want to fix it.
You fix everything.
But for the population that we're trying to fix the problem for, they never look at that thing as being a problem. It's because we didn't get a chance to really have that conversation with them to see what do you really need and how can I help. So that has been my approach. So doing that has been really understanding what are the different type of events, engagement that they want to have on campus and external to campus. Is it a service aspect related work? Is it a pageantry, or is it modeling? Because we love to. When I was a student, I was actually a model because we wear the African attire and the African on the African student association day, we typically have this runway show where we model our clothing and all that. So it's something for us to be proud, to showcase our culture, but also to be proud to have this culture, because one of the things that you can find quickly is you can really assimilate here and lose a piece of your identity if you are not strongly connected to it. So those spaces on campus allow students to remain connected to their identity and to be proud of to having that background identity as well. So how do we empower students to be able to do that was always part of the conversation in supporting them to be able to make sure that they still are proud of being African, Caribbean, wherever they're from, and showcasing that culture. So I think it was more of a co-partnership with the student themselves, so they can tell me how I can help, because as a faculty and somebody who has been part of a member of the club before, I know some of the ropes. Sometimes as an administrator, I can't really officially say certain things, but I can whisper in your ear and say, you want this done? This is how you should go about it. I will deny if you mention my name, but you want it done, do it that way, you'll get it done. And a lot of people in administration who are in part of student leadership know that we want our students to always be successful. But sometimes the logistical implication, the financial implication for the institution does not necessarily make it easy for students to have access to certain things. But because we know some of those in and out, we can help them navigate those things. Officially or unofficially, we can still be able to manage that. And I think that's really the approach that I have used to help that group. I haven't really been engaged as much here at Quinnipiac as I was, because we have a whole office, the Office of Inclusive Excellence, that's really managing that. But they have invited me. I've done a couple of workshops for them around communication leadership, and spoke to the group overall. So it's been good. But that's one thing that I know I need to go back and doing more of, is how to support this population better.
I like that, because there's nothing wrong with coming to another culture and embracing that. But like you said, there's knowing your that self. What would you say the most, I know you don't do it here, but at your last function, what was the most challenging thing about that experience though? Because I'm pretty sure y'all having conversations, y'all building, you doing certain things, but if it's at a school, sometimes does the school politics match with y'all politics y'all trying to bring? Like, what were some challenging moments in that experience you was having?
I think students were always in a position where they were encouraged to express their culture, their cultural background, and their identity, but you have to feel confident enough to be able to do it, because that's the other thing. A lot of students now, they don't feel confident that they should be in those spaces. And I remember recently I watched on an interview that former President Obama did, and talk about having a seat at the table, and sometimes people discourage you or make it seems like you don't believe in certain spaces, but you need to understand that you do believe in those spaces, and it's up to you to really challenge those groups or those spaces where people are making it feel like you don't belong there. Because when you show up in the space, you'll realize quick enough that you're actually adding more value to that space than the people who are in those spaces think before you were there. So it's really encouraging the student to embrace their identity and also tell them you have something to bring. And from my experience, for example, language was a big barrier for me. And that's why I wasn't confident early on in my journey, because I spoke French. Yeah. And I didn't quite speak English. So because of that, I don't want to speak in public, because I say I'm gonna make a mistake, and people are gonna laugh at me. People are gonna judge me because I'm not speaking well and all those things. And then I don't remember who said this to me, but at some point somebody said, "You do know that you're speaking French, you even speaking your dialect, and now you're speaking English. You're speaking 3 languages that most people in the room can barely even speak the one they have, which is English. So you are coming from a position of strength versus a position of weakness." So it took me a while to be able to realize, wow, actually that's true. I can go into multiple spaces and communicate, but some of my colleagues, they can only communicate in the English space because that's all they've known. So helping the African community and the immigrant community to be able to understand a little bit of that is part of the work that needs to happen to empower those students to continue to be proud and showcase their culture. You just have to build that confidence to say, no, I will say, if you need to ask me what 10 times, I will repeat myself. At some point, you're going to get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
If I need to change the words that I'm using to make my point, I will do that. So it's really building that confidence to get to that level.
No, that's a fact. I agree with that exactly because, I've been born in America and I've been living in America all my life. And, but I'm from a southern part of America. So coming up here, and I'm speaking and I'm talking in real time, you can hear people be like, "What?" Or they be like, "Say that again." And they just want to laugh or they can't really understand. So like you said, to your point, it got to a point where I just be like, I try to monitor what I'm saying. Like I know if it could be a certain little slur or it's gonna sound real southern, I wouldn't say it at all. But who's that helping? Nobody. It's like you said, just building that confidence.
I remember when I was in Alabama and I was there for a very short period of time. When I say to them that my uncle live in New York, they say, "Oh, those people speak funny." Because they say if you up north east, they speak funny. And the funny thing is when you go, when you live in New York, and they say, "Oh, the southern accent," because they also have an accent. I'm like, you make too much big deal out of this whole thing. It's not that serious.
Oh yeah.
As long as you can understand people, no matter what accent they have, who cares?
Labeling, brother. They label everything.
Yep.
Label and put a box in everything.
Yep.
So like you said,
The othering. Add them versus as. Like we do that all the time. Yeah.
I was looking at your bio and I want to ask you about a quote.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about this quote because I want to know what inspired you, when you hear this quote.
Mm-hmm.
The greater danger for most of us lie not in selling in our aim too high, but falling short.
Yeah.
But in seeking our aim too low and achieving our mark as our guiding principle. I like that.
Yeah, that's a quote from Michelangelo. Yeah.
How does it influence your, your talents and your approach when you're facing goals or, while you just navigating?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why a lot of people don't succeed is because the fear of failing. And or they don't want to dream big because, again, they don't want to fail. So for me, I realized that earlier on that, I always dream big. I want to achieve things. As a matter of fact, it's a little bit of default that I have. One of my mentors told me this at some point, say, you're very ambitious, you're very astute, but you're impatient. Yeah, I realized that. Impatient a little bit, not as much as he mentioned at the time. But the reason for that is because it's not my space to tell me or to tell myself or others what they can do or not do. But I can help you build a process in terms of getting you to help to get you where you want to go. And that's the same philosophy that I have for myself. So, for example, if some of my colleagues know this, I always tell people, and I've been saying this for a while now, since I started working at the City University of New York, that I want to become a college president or university president. That's a big goal. I also know that I'm not just going to jump overnight to become a college president or university president. It's a process. You have to make a career. You have to continue to progress on the ladder of leadership in order to get to that goal. So dreaming big to becoming a college president is my goal. That's the achievement. I know that. That's my almost like the North Star for me. I know that. But I also know that there are going to be steps to get me there, and I need to work on those steps. So I'd hear some colleague, at prior jobs say, "Oh, I'm okay with just being a manager, an assistant director, or director of a program." I'm like, why? Because a lot of them never view themselves anything beyond the next thing in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And are trying to push people to view yourself beyond. If you work at any organization, no matter what it is, university, corporate America, whatever it is, if you are an employee in that, you should see yourself one day sitting in the executive seat as the person running the whole thing. That's something you should aspire. Even if you don't get to achieve it, don't worry about that. But you should aspire to be that person managing the whole thing. Because if you like the place first, in the first place, to decide to work there, that means they have something that you like that you want to contribute to. So why shouldn't you think about running the whole thing one day? So again, in that that's the vein that quote come into play, because dream big, shoot high, see yourself running the whole thing, with the understanding that you can continue to make progress in achieving that at some point, instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm comfortable with just being an assistant director or just a manager. That's good for me." So for me, it's really shooting high instead of getting comfortable, because I heard some of my colleagues, in other jobs, work at a place in the same role for 15 years. And I'm talking to them, and I can sense that they are very unhappy about where they are. They're unhappy, but they can't do anything about it, because once you sit in a certain role for too long, people don't view you past that. You will always be that one person in that role. That's all they see. So they don't view you as somebody who can make it to the next level. But the problem is you never seen yourself in that next level in the first place. So the goal of that quote is to see yourself as the biggest thing you can always achieve, and then work towards that. And same thing with project. I use one funny one. One of my colleagues, I say, if one of my students come to me and say, "I want to go to the moon," it's not my job to say, "No, you can't go to the moon." I will ask you, is that truly what you want to do? So what are the things that you need in order to become an astronaut?
Let him cook.
That's the conversation we need to have.
Yeah.
What are the degrees? What are the college courses? What are the experiences you need? Let's start to talk about the plan.
Perfect.
That you're going to need to put in place in order to get to the moon. It's not my job to tell you can't go to the moon. Who am I? But I would rather you set that goal high and us work in the process to get you there, instead of just saying, "You know what? I just like to work in that office over there. I just like to do this one thing," and that's it. So that's, again, the motivating factors around using that quote in, sometimes in my email signature or in different places, because it allows people to start to see something that is bigger.
So when you become president, we're going to say when you become president, what would be your principles and goals?
As a president, I'm going to do, for sure, most educational systems educate students, and in those groups of students, sometimes there are leaders that arise out of that group. No, I want to run a university where everybody is seen as a leader. Everybody is seen as a leader. I'm in the business of, my motto is, I'm going to be in the business of making leaders. You come to this university, you're going to be a leader. So, of course, that's going to mean that we have to redefine what leadership is in essence, for people to become comfortable with the term. The reason why people don't elect to be a leader is because sometimes there is a level of discomfort, because people, when they think about leadership, they think about something so big that they don't think that they can carry the burden of a leader. But we have to deconstruct that concept for people to become comfortable with being a leader, and that's going to be my motto. Literally, you come to this university, you come to this college, we are in the business of making leaders. You're going to be the next part of the next group of leaders. All the students that are coming through our door. So that's the one thing that is going to be a differentiator for me personally, because I haven't seen that model anywhere yet where leadership is embraced by the whole entire university or college as their identity.
Nice. Speaking of politics, because like you said, there's a lot of politics when you become a president of a school.
No, trust me, more and more.
I want to highlight, because you said leadership as well. I want to highlight traditional leadership. in the contents of American politics.
Mhm.
I feel like it's a reality show. I feel like it's TV. I feel like it's entertainment. I feel like sometimes politics are not real. But I also see from time for time they'll do certain structural things that has a solid foundation to it, a traditional type of leadership to it. How do you see the framework of American politics shaping traditional leadership styles on education and, just the trust of the people of the world?
Well, the interesting about leadership is that, and when I do teach leadership courses, because I typically ask people, give me an example of leaders. And most of the time, it's either CEOs of corporate organization or politicians. Those are the names that always come up. And that's oftentimes how students, or at least the younger generation, view leadership, or the traditional leadership in the true sense. So that is because, we elevate leadership as something that is a pedestal that you need to be on in order to lead a group of people, and you need to have a certain type of persona. And unfortunately, and this is true, a lot of data have shown this, leadership in a traditional sense is the white male, tall, having that presence. That's what people don't sometimes don't even think about the true attribute of what leadership is. It's really, when I look at you, do you look like a leader? And unfortunately, we see a lot of that today in politics when things are playing out. So it is influencing, for sure, how the younger generation, which means that the next group of leaders are viewing leadership, and it's going to affect how they act as leaders. Hence why, for us educators, we need to instill in this group of students the true value of leadership. What is the leadership? When you think about leadership, let's bring it down to the basic level of what it truly is. Because the traditional leader, when you think about an elected official, should be a what? A servant leader. Should be in the business of serving the people. Do we always see that? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So what are the things that we need to instill in our students to always remember that when you get into the leadership position, especially in politics and leadership, you remember that you are in the service of people. And service of people, that don't mean that the people that only agree with you. That's the key factor. Because we got to a point in politics now where if I agree with you, we're cool. If I don't agree with you, we are enemies.
Oh, we at war. Yeah.
But it shouldn't be that way. Because as human, at the basic level, we're always going to have different type of ideas on how to get things done. That's just life. So why is it that if you have different ideas than I do, all of a sudden you are my enemy? And that's the one thing about politics that I think is influencing how people are viewing leadership. That is going to be essential for us to switch around back again. Because if you think about it, like I think I heard one of the senators in Capitol Hill was saying this in one of the interviews, saying it's sad where things are now, because there used to be a time where we go in the Senate, we vote on a bill, I disagree with you, I vote against your bill, but at the end we still get out and go have a lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know you are well intentioned, you're trying to make positive impact, you just have a different approach to it, and I don't agree with your approach, but I understand it. So beyond that, we still good people because we are in the business of serving people. So let's go have lunch. Let's talk about other things that we can agree on so we can continue to make impact. Unfortunately, a little bit of that is being lost today because of politics. And that's one of the key influence that politics is having on leadership today. Altogether, that's something that we're going to have to switch around, which is, I don't know how we're going to do it, because I'm not going to sit here and say I have the secret to that, but we have to get back to the root of things where we disagree with each other, but we don't view each other as enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing, unfortunately, that politics is doing a lot today on leadership that I'm afraid is going to have lasting impact on the next generation, because, again, when they are being educated and grow into some of those systems that are already polarized, they stay in their camp. Yeah. So the goal for us is you can have differences, but you can still work together. How do we get to that middle ground?
I think the last time we seen when it was class and, like you said, a point where we might not agree, but we could still find some balance was Obama
Yeah.
when he was running, and then when he became president. I think it was him and John McCain. I think that was the last time we really seen two politicians
that disagree with each other, but we were still cool with each other. Yes, that's true.
And to your point, I feel like you said, there's no perfect answer to this. So I feel like we're going through failure and then going through that it's a part of life, and going through this process, then we might get to a better state. I talked about the gift of failure on one of my episodes prior to this, about how the gift of failure got me to a better situation. And I remember you highlighted earlier that you got to, in order to win or in order to be a leader, you got to embrace the fact that you might lose. What was a time that you really realized the gift of failure in your journey?
Oh, wow. I can pinpoint to few jobs that I applied for and I didn't get. So, especially when you really believe you've done a masterful job during the interview process and you still end up getting the job, you question. So, let me put it into context. So, when I got my doctorate, at that time I was primed to make the next move in terms of what's next for me in terms of the leadership journey. And I started applying for a few different jobs, but I didn't get a lot of interviews, and I did get some, and some of them were grueling because it's all day interview. You go starting from like 8 o'clock in the morning all the way until like 5 or 6 p.m. and you meet a whole bunch of people, and at the end of the day, you still don't get the job. So, while, at the time, those were considered failure, at least by my own standard, I think, later on I realized they were only building me up for the right opportunity. And the thing about failure, when you are inside of it, just like sport, it hurts. And when you're hurt, your judgment is clouded. You don't think straight when you are in hurt. Like when you're in pain, it's just like, why me? Why not me? You start to ask all those questions, and some of them you're never gonna get an answer for, and you get in that space where you just get stuck on some of those. And then later on, when you are able to move past them, you realize the things that you learn from that. Because from those experiences that I didn't get those jobs, I actually learned a lot. Like I learned a lot. Like I pinpoint to moment when I'm like, oh, I went to this interview, and during this interview they asked me this question, and this is how I answered, and I screwed that up royally. Like, yeah, now I know that I screwed it up royally. So next time that question come up, I'm not dropping the ball on that one again. Or an idea, somebody asked me a question about an idea about something, I'm like, I never thought about this, but this sounds like a great idea. And that's become part of something that you want to do later on in the future because you use that moment as something that you learn from. So again, it's viewing those moments not necessarily as failure, but as challenges that you overcame and that make you better as an individual, as a leader moving forward. So a lot of it will be in the jobs thing. But if I go even further, at the beginning when I was a student, I remember when I became the chair of the University Student Senate at CUNY. Before I became the chair, I ran the year prior to be one of the vice chair for one of the area because we have nine vice chairs and then the chair. So we have a steering of 10 people. I ran to be the vice chair and I lost. Lost. And the way I even lost was very hurtful because you have to get a certain amount of votes in order to get elected. I think at the time it was 21, if I'm not mistaken. You need 21 votes. And I've came as close as 20 votes. I just needed that one.
That one.
I didn't get it. So we kept doing runoff and against the same individual. Yeah. You have to keep doing that till somebody get 21. Like we did at least 5 runoffs or 6 runoffs for that election. I end up always leading that person in like everyone to losing to that person. Like, and this lasted over the couple of weeks in theory. So that was one of the most difficult moments for me. But the one thing that I learned from that experience, and one of my friends always acknowledged this, is while I was in pain, I didn't let the pain block me, because the chair position itself was being contested as well, and the person that was part of my slate did not get the 21 vote either. So he kept doing it. When I lost, I went to my opponent that just beat me, and I told my opponent, listen, you gotta vote for my chair. Like, you won, so you have nothing to worry about now in terms of, oh, if I vote for him, this is gonna happen. No, you just won. But this is the reality. This is the reason why you should vote for that person to become the chair of the organization, because that person can make the organization better. So I literally convinced my opponent that just beat me to vote for my chair to become the chair. And when my friend who was the chair at the time saw that, he was amazed, because that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
And like, that was one of those defining moments, because I'm like, if we all want to make this organization better, me losing the election doesn't mean that I should just give up on the organization.
Yeah.
We should still think about what's best for the organization. And the following year, although I lost the election to the vice chair, I came back, ran for the chairmanship, and won that year. So I didn't even need to be a vice chair to become a chair. That's one of the life lessons, where sometimes you fail at one thing, but that don't mean that you cannot accomplish something that is bigger than that. And that was one of the lessons that I learned from that experience, that yes, you can fail, but you can still become something better.
Walk into a bigger blessing.
Yep.
Exactly. That's a fact. Cause like you highlighted something I want to speak on that. When you was like, this because I lost and this because I didn't win, I'm still coming here and I want to see this place grow. That team development. There's this building a surviving team. You know, that requires a lot, right? It requires not only skills, not only the vibes, communication, collaboration. In your experience, what are the key, tools or maybe antidotes that can help, build and have a strong, productive team dynamic?
So to build a very strong team, first of all, you need to, so two phases. It's either you are building a team from scratch, or you join a team that's already in place. So if you are building the team from scratch, obviously, and they both are tied to some extent, where you need to be intentional about who you are adding to the team. Are you really adding all the colors to the team? The colors we mentioned earlier, the 4 colors. Make sure you have a component of each one of them in the team that you bring into the team. And when you bring people to the team, make sure they know what are the colors, who are the other person, what type of colors they are. Because what it does is it allow people to be a little more forgiving when somebody dropped the ball. So when somebody dropped the ball, you can say, oh, this is their dominant color, and this is how they operate, and this is why this area was an area of weakness for them. So how do we support that person to become successful in the future? So building the right chemistry is really important, and I always encourage people to do the true color activity with all their teams, so they know, so the team members know who is who, what they bring to the table, because it allows people to have a better communication with each other, because communication is the second component of that. Effective communication. If you do not learn how to communicate effectively, and if your team members don't know how to do it, you're always going to face challenges and conflict. That's guaranteed. So effective communication. Don't assume things, because we humans are always in the business of assuming. Oh, I assume you were doing this. I assume you were going to do that. We do that all the time, including myself.
You usually do that.
Yeah, you usually do that. So I assume you were going to do it. So we do, because we are in the business of assuming, we do that all the time, and we project on others. So make sure that you are communicating and not assuming. All the team members need to be on the same page around what the vision is, what are we trying to accomplish, and how are we trying to accomplish this. And not only you trying to set the thing, but bring everybody to the table to contribute to how we can get to what we are trying to achieve. They need to have a skin in the game. So if you bring your idea, somebody bring their idea, we sort through them and identify the one that we can go with, it allows people to start to feel that, all right, my input is being valued. And when my input is being valued, I will continue to do what? Bring more input to the table. That's going to always make the product better. But if I feel like my input is never valued, I'm going to sit in meetings and just like, it's not like if I say anything, you're going to take it into consideration anyway. So I'm not going to contribute. And unfortunately, sometimes you end up in a situation where that person might actually have the best idea to get you out of that situation that you are in. But because that person is not speaking or doesn't feel value as a team member, they are not contribute to how you can resolve the issue. So definitely communication is the other piece. And then do a lot of team building activities to continue to get people to know each other. So people need to know each other. Do happy hours or just a social, go together as a group to a museum. Do something. Let people get outside the wall of the work to get to see, oh, wow, you're actually a very fun person. I didn't know that. It allows people to build what? Trust.
Yeah.
Which is another foundational element of effective team. If there is a trust, then I will never assume or think you have bad intention because I know who you are. There's no way that came out of a bad place. So you know what? Let's process that. Let's work through that. So conflict management become much easier because you can easily manage those conflicts because again, the trust is there. People know each other, knows the personalities that are in the room, and people believe in the vision. So some of those things that I will say right off the gate, every team needs to be able to effectively do in order to be successful. And unfortunately, you can just leave it up to chance. There needs to be some intentionality behind that, which means that the person who's considered the leader of the team need to play an active role in setting the stage for this to happen.
Yeah, setting that tone.
So you have to set the tone. The other thing that I want to connect back to this quickly is the true colors. The one thing that I didn't say earlier that actually still apply is when you get to a point where you know your true colors and you mastered your color nicely, you can walk into any room and become any color that you want. Because if I walk in the room and I realize this room is full of greens right now and there is no blue, I can turn into a blue. Because I'm realizing that's the need of this group in this moment. So I can change my green color, which is my dominant color, to become blue, so the team can be much more effective. And I can do that with gold. I can do that with orange. Now, the reality is it takes years to get to that point where you get comfortable enough with the characteristic of each color to be able to do that. Not only to be able to do that, to also be able to walk into a room and see what's missing in the room and become that thing in the room. So build a team allows you to be able to bring those colors, or if you join a team that's already built, identify the colors and become the color that's missing in the room so you can have the team dynamic, balance, and the chemistry is there.
I want to take us to that, that time and your frame of mind when you made that transition from not the soccer player no more to the coach. How was that process when you did that?
Let me just start by saying, if I have to choose between being a player and a coach, I'll choose a player any day. Coaching is one of the most difficult things to do, especially when you have a team that is keep losing every week. Not the greatest feeling.
No.
So let's put it this way. So let me start by saying that. But so when I graduated with my first degree, I was the captain of the soccer team at the time. So my coach needed an assistant coach. And, I just graduated. I needed a job. So my coach was like, well, you've been playing a leadership role already in the team as a captain. Are you interested in being an assistant coach? So I was like, sure, absolutely. I would love to do that. So became the assistant coach for about 2 years or 3 years, just getting to be part of the the coaching staff, identifying how to be the right coach, learning the techniques and all those things. Now, I have talking about life lesson too. I'll get to that in a second. So as I became the assistant coach for 2 years, I think in my third year, the college decided to build a women's soccer team. So when they decided to build a women's soccer team, they asked me if I'm interested to be the head coach for the women's soccer team. So I was like, absolutely. So ended up becoming the head coach of the women's soccer team. And the way the team started is you had a group of people, ladies that graduated all from high school. They knew each other. A lot of them, like about 6 of them or 7 of them, came together to the institution.
Oh, wow.
So there is that connection there that they knew each other. So you just need a couple more people that are interested in soccer, and they have already been interested in a couple ladies that wanted to. So we built the team based on that group. The problem is, in the whole team, maybe about 4 or 5 people, let's just say about 5 people know how to play soccer. The other ones love soccer. They love to go in the park and kick the ball around with the family, friends, but they don't have the foundational understanding of what it is to play in a team structure.
Out of 4 and 5, it's like how many people on the team?
You need 11 to start a game. So
that's not even close to half.
No, you need 11 to start a game. So when we did the first year, we started with half of the team knowing how to play soccer and have played soccer to some extent, to the other half that never really played in any structured way. So out of that half that never played, maybe 1 or 2 of them have some sort of skills that you can work with. Mm-hmm. And the other one, again, they are just numbers. So building that team was one of the best lesson that I've learned in my whole entire career. And we kept going to every game and losing every game. And coming back and going back to practice and trying again. The one thing that I have to give to the ladies, and this is one difference that I want to make between men, because I became the head coach of the men team at some point too. Women are much more committed. When I tell the ladies we are practicing at 6 o'clock in the morning, guess who's there at 6 o'clock in the morning?
The ladies.
The lady. They're there. No lateness. All of them. Although we were losing almost every game, but when I say we are practicing at 6 o'clock in the morning, they all showed up because they love it. They have the commitment and they want to do this. Unfortunately, the commitment itself is not good enough to replace the skill. Because you need the skill in order to compete effectively. There were a couple of games that we played that were really close. I think we ended up winning 1 game that season. That was the only game we won that season.
Out of how many games?
We played like 13 games.
Oh, God.
Yes. We played 13 games. We ended up winning 1 game in that season, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, no, actually 2. Let me give them credit. 2.
2 counts. 2 counts.
1 is the team in a conference that was worse than us. That we beat them badly, because it's almost like when you kept getting beat and finally you get hand somebody, you're like, oh, I'm gonna do to you what everybody have been doing to me. Oh, we beat them. We beat the crap out of them.
Trying out new stuff and everything.
So that was, and I'm not gonna call it a name, but we beat the crap out of that team because we had so much anger built that we needed to let on somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And they turned out to be that. And we ended up winning another game by 1 goal, which was a very tough game, but we ended up winning that too. So it was challenging because you have to wake up as a coach and come back and say, we have to go back at it, although you know that you don't have the tools or the things that you need in order to build a championship winning team, but you have to continue. Because I'm looking at the ladies, I'm looking at them like, I can't give up on them. No, they are committed, like 100% committed to this, and I want to be there for them. We all going to be there in the struggle. We all going to continue to build and become better. So fast forward, I became the head coach of the male team as well. Male team, difference. You tell them to be there at 6 o'clock. Maybe about half of the team is there at 6 o'clock. 6:15, a couple of people trickling. 6:30, other people trickling. And no matter how much punishment you gave them, that was their habit. They were never 100%, the whole entire team committed, especially to the discipline that you wanted them to have. And one of the quick mistakes that I also learned in my early coaching career is discipline is something that is really important for me. Because when I was coaching the female, I never had an issue with discipline. Like, I didn't even have to say much. Discipline was there. With the guy, when we did our first tryout, that year, because I'm very big on discipline and fitness, because I've played as a student, I know why we were losing and when we were winning. Fitness was always the biggest, because when you run out of gas by the end of the first half and you still have a whole half to play, then you're gonna lose the game 100% guaranteed. So I did a tryout. First trial of the guy, I set up fitness station all over, like 10 different stations. I say, if you can pass these fitness thing, you're gonna be great. For that first tryout, I had about 20 guys showed up. Worked them out. The next day, we were supposed to come back. Only 11 people showed up.
Oh.
I lost half of the team, and I didn't even know why. And I asked one of the guy who was one of the returning player from the previous year. He's like, yeah, so one of the guys, he said, your coach is crazy. He's trying to kill us.
Oh, no. They only need one time.
I'm like, so that season we end up with maybe 13 guys. And when somebody get hurt, that's it. Same thing. End up being a losing season. No matter what you do, you can catch a break. But one thing that I learned from that experience is, out of the people that didn't come back, there were decent players in that group. I could have worked with the skill and slowly build the fitness for them. But I wanted to do the fitness because I know they need it in order to be successful. So my approach as a coach changed from there. In order, you don't need to be that hard from day one. You need to assess the skills level and see how you can tailor something to help people continue to develop. And that was my lesson from there, because I'm like, I lost half of the team. I couldn't even understand what happened myself, because I'm like, I was excited first day, and a lot of them were doing the drills and all that. I say, oh, this is the year. I'm building a championship team. Like, I'm looking at what I have, and when I lost half of that team, it ended up being really bad. So I had a lot of lesson that I learned from, being a coach, and I started to grow a lot of gray hair from being a coach, because it was always one of the most difficult things, because you never stop coaching. Even when you go home, all the games, you play them in your head. In the middle of eating, dinner, watching TV, doing anything, the games, it just show up in your head, and you start to identify areas that you can work on, things that people did wrong and all that. So it was so much stress that at some point, because I was also working my doctorate at the time, at some point I told the coach, the athletic director, like, I don't think I'm giving 100% commitment to this anymore, because my time is split in different ways. So I'm more than happy if you want to find somebody to come and replace me, to like give the team all the attention. Which she said, I don't want to let you go. I want you to also still remain on board while I bring another coach, which she did. But still, that year, things didn't go quite well. So I'm like, you know what? I think my time as a coach has come to an end. But the life lesson in terms of how to manage a team, how to build a team that's suffering, a team that's going through a pain, and how to empower people, I did learn so much that I still apply until today.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Before we go, good brother.
Yeah.
Before we go, I want to ask you one more thing. I know earlier you said you want to become the president, of the school, which you will be. But what other goals are we tapping into right now?
I think my passion primarily has always been to educate leaders in various pockets, regardless of it being in a educational setting. So even professionally, and that's why you have, you saw my website, because I have a consulting that I do this specifically for professionals. It can be a student or professionals that just want to develop themselves and become better leaders, or if you're looking into making the a team that you already have. You want to trying to build a stronger dynamic in the team and build a stronger team. I do those things. So those are other things that I want to continue to do. And because they are something that I really love, I'm very passionate about doing that. So my goal is to get to a point where that consulting also become, if not the main thing for me, after I complete my career in higher education, like really developing that consulting to be the thing where, because I love traveling, a consulting gets you to travel a lot. So that's one thing that I want to do. Love traveling, love doing consulting. Why not marry the two in order to enjoy what you do a day in and day out? So I would say definitely that's another area that I think that's a goal of mine, to really continue to grow. But other than that, listen, continue to just enjoy life and be of assistance whatever needed. I'm type of person, I have a consultant, but if you tell me I need your service but I don't have any money, I'll still do it for you. Because
Nice.
for me, things go beyond money.
Mhm.
Because if I see you being successful, that create more happiness to me than trying to say no to you and you don't become successful because you didn't get what you needed. So for me, being a servant leader, to continue to empower others to just be better human beings and continue to evolve and be making society better. So I will say those are personal things for me that I will continue to cherish and continue to help empower.
Thank you, brother. Thank
Bro.
you so much for coming in. Thank you so much for y'all tapping into Potted Language. This has been another great one. Peace and blessing to you. My name is Ra. Peace.